All right, welcome back to the human face proportions part dos. We are going into, we ended on this lovely face map with all of these weird little lines making us look like a robot, but really giving us a thing to be able to place any type of facial feature into these parts. So what we're going to focus on today is how they fit in those parts, because if you don't get that right, then it's going to be very awkward looking. So we're going to start off with your lovely eye shapes. Most eyes are kind of a football shape. So we're going to go from corner to corner right here, and we are on the line that we drew, on that eye line. So corner to corner, in these two spots, that is where your eyes fall. Now, eyes can be slanted lots of different directions. They can have eyelids that really create a different shape depending on your genetics. But since we are just doing a very generic eye, we're just doing a football shape. And if you put a little corner in each section, notice how it doesn't go over those sections. This is going to create the perfect shaped eye, or the perfect sized eye, because what happens is that most students will make oversized eyes. It is the most common problem, other than putting the eyes right up smack dab in the forehead, which is also pretty weird. So this will keep you from making eyes that are too big, because you have that perfectly proportioned out with the 5 eye widths. Next, we're going to draw a nose. Now, later on, we're going to learn how to make a really detailed eye and a really nice looking nose, which a nose is all about shadows, really. So right now, we're going to do a very generic looking nose. And what you have to do is make sure that your nose is resting on top of this line. So we did the halfway point. Remember, this was halfway, but your nose has to sit on top. It rests above it. So I'm going to just do a little parentheses. A parentheses just like this. That's those 2 lines that we talk about in grammar and English. And then 2 half circles for nostrils connected by a curve. So here's a nostril, a little half circle, here's a nostril, and they're connected by a little curve underneath. Now, like I said, everyone has different genetics. All of the different facial features are different, but in general, your nose will rest right at these little lines right here where the corners of your eyes are, and they have to sit on top of that line. Above that line. If you put it right on top of the line, then your nose is going to be way too long looking. It's going to look weird. But if it rests on top of that line, then it'll look fine. Now, you could have nostrils that come halfway up the nose. Sometimes people have really large nostrils, and they'll come halfway up like that, and or really tall nostrils, not necessarily large, but just taller nostrils. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is just a different type of nose shape. Underneath that, you have your mouth. And remember, the lips meet a third of the way between here and here. And since your lips meet here, you can have any size lips. You can have very full lips or very thin lips. It doesn't matter. So right here, we're going to do what is known as the Cupid's bow. And we're going to label this. It is the shape of your nose right here. Generally, most people's will curve down right underneath that spot, and our median line is there, so we can make sure we center this. This is the little Cupid's bow right here, and it curves down. Now, the top lip also has where it pooches down right there underneath that. So notice how they are similar shapes, and that creates that like very like pouty look. Then you have either you can curve up, I'm going to put little dotted lines, or you can curve down, or you can have a straight line here. Everyone's a little bit different. I generally will curve them up because I think that's more how my lips are, so I'm used to looking at my lips. And they never go all the way to the edges. Most of them don't go all the way to the edges. They usually taper a little bit like right here. So what I like to do is put a little line here and here about the same spot, so I know that I am ending my lips at the same place, and that gives me a spot to aim toward. And then I'll do a little curved line or a little straight line. Remember, you could do either, whichever you prefer, curved or straight. And that is a nice general shape of our Cupid's bow. So I'm gonna put a little label over here, Cupid's bow, Cupid is that little angel guy who shoots bows at people to make them fall in love. Now the bottom lip usually actually kind of goes to those edge corners, especially if you've got fuller lips. So your bottom lip might come out a little further, and it usually is kind of straight right here, and then it curves up. So I put pretty full lips on here, but you don't have to put full lips in there. Lips are all about shading too, and we are going to learn how to do very specific lips later on. The next thing to know about are your ears. Your ears line up with right about your eye level on both sides like this, and right about the bottom of your nose. So I'm going to do these little dotted lines so you know that they line up with your ears. Now, your ear shape have different parts. It's sort of an ellipse shape, so like if you take a circle and you look at it from the edge, it's a squished circle. If you're drawing an ear from the front, you should put a little ellipse. We'll put like a little curve where it cuts there, and a little curve where it's right here. You can just kind of do things like that. Everybody's ears are different, and the great thing about that is that they're sort of like fingerprints. You know that your ears are like unlike anyone else's ears. You could actually recognize people specifically by their ears. And a little known fact is that your ears and your nose and your feet never stop growing. They just keep going. So that's why when you see old people, they have really big schnozzes and really flappy ears. So the thing that you have to remember when you're drawing an ear is that we have this thing right here. This is the cartilage, and from the front it kind of looks like that. It tapers out, it gets a little, it's thicker and then it gets thinner usually. And then let me do this side. Cartilage, right? So we'll label C-A-R-T-I-L-E-D-G-E, cartilage. And then you have this thing right here. This is a very special name. Some people get piercings on this thing. It pops out. It is also made with cartilage, but it has a specific label. And I might ask you a bonus question about this thing. It's called the tragus on both sides. If you don't put that, your ear's going to look kind of weird, right? And then you have this lovely little fatty part down at the bottom. Anybody know what that is? That's your lobe. It's just a little curved line for your lobe. So if you include those things, the cartilage curve, the tragus curve, and the lobe curve, then you're going to have a pretty good looking ear. So for a hairline, I mean, we all know that this can change, right? Your hairline will recede no matter, I mean, it could start in high school for all you know. So your hairline, a good general rule of thumb, is about halfway between your eye line and the top of your head. So you could really eyeball this, but if you center your two in that spot, this is round about halfway right there. And the thing to remember about the hairline is that if you put it at the halfway point, it's going to look normal. It's not going to look like too weird or abnormal. And the hairline has to curve down in front of the ears. And we're going to look at this in a minute. We're going to actually create longer hair, and we're going to create shorter hair so you can see the difference. But you have to curve it down here in front of the ears, and this curves around your forehead and your temples. So everyone's hair does this. Even girl hair or longer hair kind of looks like a monkey right now because we don't have any hair. If you don't if you leave this just the round shape right here, it's going to look like you're wearing a bathing suit cap, or that you're bald like Curious George. So then we have to think about where the eyebrows are going to go. Again, everyone has this thing right here called the brow bone. Some people have more prominent brow bones, some people have less prominent brow bones, but a good rule of thumb is that if you break up, I'm going to erase this little spot, this space between here and the eye line, the forehead and the eye line, into thirds, then it will be, that lower third is a good spot for your eyebrows. So there's one, that's 1, 2, 3, right? We've got in thirds, so right about here. And I can use my ruler to make sure that I am drawing straight on the edge of the paper. This is about, I'm only going to just put a dotted line. This is a good spot to arch my eyebrows, because you know that your eyebrows are not straight. Usually they have an arch. Some people have more of an arch, some people have less of an arch, but this is a good way to start it. So if you curve, you're starting from this spot where the edge of the eye is to the outer edge, right? You curve a line. It starts below and goes above and then comes back down. Notice how it arches right over that line. Same thing here. I'm just putting an outline right now. I'm starting it here and kind of arching it, and make sure that my arches look pretty similar. And then you fluff them out to the right shape. So the inside edge of your eyebrow is always fuller. I usually put a little line there to indicate where I want it to start. Some people go a little bit further in toward the center, but this is a nice generic rule of thumb for eyebrows. So it's going to be wider, and then it's going to taper out. Wider and taper out. And again, you can make it longer or shorter depending on what look you like. So some people might have less taper, some people might have less arch. I don't have very much arch at all. Mine kind of just looks like a big fuzzy caterpillar like this one. So I'm curving around them. There's no right or wrong way. See how I did this one a little bit thicker? And that one's a little bit more tapered. I mean, that is a personal choice. I just decided to make one more than the other. For the neck, we have a couple of different things to cover. So the female neck is generally a much more narrow neck, meaning it's not as wide. Now, right now, you guys are at the age where your necks are all very similar, but as you get older and you're at that full adult grown age, the male neck is going to be a lot wider. So a good rule of thumb for where to begin the neck is right at the corners of the eyebrow, at the eyes. For females, you don't want to go smaller than that. It doesn't mean that that's exactly where they'll start. It just means you don't want to go smaller than that, or else you're going to look like a Q-tip. We don't want Q-tips. We want beautiful necks. And then you're going to gently arch the space. Now, usually a person's neck is about half a head long. So you can do like this, which is half a head. And you're just going to have a gentle arch. Whoops. Drawing all sketchy. Gentle arch. And see how it arched within that half a head? So same thing, half a head. And you have a gentle arch. That doesn't mean that it doesn't start arching before then. I got to match my arch down here. So it doesn't mean that all necks are half a head. That is just a nice general rule of thumb. Half a head is a good distance to have, and that's starting way up here, right? So if we look at our paper a little bit more flat, this is a nice female neck. So we're going to label this female neck. And then for the male neck, it can be a lot of different ways. So it can be a wider neck depending on muscles, because your muscles will get wider and wider, and you can have super thick neck, right? So in general, right here at the bottom of the jawline, you can do the same arch, half a head, but it will make your person look more masculine if you make the wider neck. So we're going to say male neck, wider. Couldn't tell y'all couldn't see that.